I'm Eoin O'Toole. I'm the chair of the CILT Ireland Policy Committee, and you're all very welcome to today's event. This is one of our first webinars, so please bear with us if it's not completely smooth as we go through the process. So we're very obviously interested in sustainability, like many other people, and this particular point in time. So today our focus is really on, are we on the road to sustainable freight transport? So I'm just going to give a brief overview of today's agenda before handing over to the Minister to start off. I know the Minister has a busy schedule, so we'll need to be prioritised up first in terms of the presentation. So Minister Naughton will give us a welcome speech, just kicking off at 10 a.m. for a couple of minutes. And then we'll come back to myself and Sabrina, and we're going to talk about an overview of our transport policy review in Ireland, focusing on the logistics and transportation sector. Then we'll have Tom Ferris in terms of a transportation consultant. He's going to talk to us around the transport centre stage. And we also have then at 10:45, John Pakenham on VisionGreen, and very interesting, exciting journey in terms of biomethane fleet and sustainability reporting. And also we have Joanne Mellon looking at technology-enabled carbon saving in BWG's fleet operation. So we have a very interesting mix here, looking at kind of the policy perspective, but also in practice and what's actually happening, I suppose, on the ground and in the real world, and how things are going to progress as we move towards the future plans in terms of net zero, by 2050. So I'm just going to hand straight over to Minister Naughton. Over to you, if you wouldn't mind. And thank you very much. We're delighted to have you here this morning and joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Plant, for your introduction, and also to the Institute for inviting me to address you at the launch of this very important report on sustainable transport policy in Ireland. Sustainability, and in particular decarbonisation, will remain at the core of transport policy making for many, many years to come. And I very much welcome the contribution the Institute is making on this. Given the nature of CILT's work, the report and today's event naturally put an emphasis on the transport of goods. However, the report is quite rightly placed within the context of overall transport and climate change policy. Today's report observes that to date, sustainable transport policy in Ireland has focused much more on passenger transport than freight transport. And I think it's fair to say that the freight transport and the wider logistics sector sometimes gets a bit lost in the public debate on transport policy. There's a natural inclination to prioritise passenger transport, since most of us ordinarily avail of this every day. However, we forget that as consumers of goods, we are so reliant on freight transport every day. And this has been more evident than ever during the COVID pandemic, where passenger transport has been severely restricted, but supply chains for goods have been more important than ever before, and in particular for essential goods. The importance of sustainable freight transport into the future is evident from the statistics. One report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change estimated that over 40% of global transport emissions are attributable to the transport of goods. In Ireland, the Environmental Protection Agency's figures show that heavy goods vehicles are responsible for approximately 18% of land transport emissions, with a further 8% attributable to light goods vehicles. Clearly, our decarbonisation policy response needs to address the source of over a quarter of our road transport emissions. And while these figures attempt to make a split between passenger and goods transport in policy terms, such a split is not really possible. All modes of transport use the same infrastructure for both passengers and goods, and often both are transported on the same vehicle at the same time, particularly in aviation and shipping. This means that for the most part, it's not possible to split sustainable transport policy between passenger and goods transport. As today's report demonstrates, there are two sides of the same coin, and they need to be dealt with in tandem. The government has, of course, put a new emphasis on sustainability, and in particular the climate change agenda, since it came into office last year. The programme for government commits to 7% average annual emissions reductions to 2030, while ultimately the goal is for a zero-emission mobility system by 2050. Despite the costs and the challenges involved, a comprehensive programme of work is already underway to decarbonise the transport sector. And it's fair to say that for the freight transport, this challenge is greater, particularly in road transport, due to its overwhelming reliance on diesel at present. Some very significant steps were taken in March towards achieving the government's goal. A new climate change bill was published, along with an interim climate action plan for 2021 and a consultation on a new climate action plan for later in the year. In relation to the latter, the government launched a climate conversation, which is open for submissions until the 18th of May, and I'd encourage you all to participate in that. Included in the climate action plan for this year is the programme for government's commitment to adopt a 10-year haulage strategy. And I was pleased to publish the first consultation document on this just last week. So this will be the first ever government policy document focusing exclusively on the haulage sector. The 10-year strategy will focus on improving efficiencies and standards and helping the sector move to a low carbon future. And I look forward to the Institute's participation in that important policy initiative also. Decarbonisation is at the core of the 10-year strategy consultation. A key driver is the fact that manufacturers and retailers are increasingly demanding that their freight, transport, distribution and logistics providers transport their goods with a low CO2 footprint. A number of steps have already been taken to help the freight sector address the decarbonisation challenge. In March, a new alternatively fuelled heavy-duty vehicle purchase grant scheme was launched, and it's now open for applications from operators of these vehicles. The scheme will help bridge some of the difference in purchase price between the conventional heavy-duty vehicles and those powered by alternatively fuelled powertrains. The government is also supporting the uptake of electric vehicle technologies and the rollout of infrastructure for alternative fuels. Additional supports most relevant for the freight sector include maintaining a low excise rate for natural gas and biogas to facilitate the uptake of compressed natural gas and biogas, and an accelerated capital allowance scheme for gas-propelled vehicles and related equipment. My department also commissioned a number of studies to examine how best to maximise the emissions reduction potential of the existing fleet and to identify the most viable decarbonisation options going forward. In 2020, the department, together with Transport Infrastructure Ireland, completed a freight decarbonisation study that aimed to better understand the policy and logistics context within which the Irish freight industry operates. The department, along with the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, is currently co-funding a research project that aims to accurately capture freight movements in Ireland. So this information will be used to assess which alternative fuel type would best suit the Irish market in the future. The project will have a particular focus on CNG, biomethane, electric vehicles, and hydrogen vehicles. The research proposal call was published in March of this year, and it's hoped that the project will begin later this year. The Institute's report, published today, makes a really valuable contribution to this ongoing research. I'd like to thank you again for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today, and I look forward to working with you all to help address the very challenging sustainable transport agenda over the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. That's very informative, and I'm glad to see, and we'll be very happy to participate in future consultations as well going forward. So thank you very much for that insightful overview. And as you can see quite clearly, there is a lot of actions and activity focused on the decarbonisation agenda to progress things forward as we need to do, I think, as society recognises we need to do. So thank you. I know you're very busy schedule, so we'll move quite quickly along. And if anyone has any questions, we're going to take the questions in the chat box, and we'll get to those questions towards the end of the session itself. So we're going to move on to the next element of this. So we're going to have the policy committee. So just to give you an overview of the policy committee, they're responsible in terms of CILT for coming up with the research agenda and for transport policy, both not only in terms of logistics, but broader transportation aspects. So we've embarked on, I suppose, further engagement in developing policy research, in particular the last 18 months when we brought Sabrina on board as a researcher to join the policy committee team. And we were a mix of academics, also in terms of public policy and also in terms of industry. So this is one of our key first reports, the Transport Policy Review, which Sabrina is going to give us an overview of, and it is available on our website also. And Sabrina, this is one of the first of 3 reports that we're initially focusing on very much based on the sustainability aspect. And Sabrina will give you a bit more information about this report, and also in relation to the next study, which we're actually looking for people's help to contribute to that in terms of primary research gathering. So Sabrina, over to you, please.
Yeah, thank you. So I will take over, share my slides. Okay, just give me a second. Is everybody okay to see the slides?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Good morning, everybody. It's my great honor here today to, on behalf of the CILT Ireland Policy Committee, to present our first policy reports on transport policy review. And in this study, we investigate where does Ireland stand on climate change for passenger transport and freight transport. And today our webinar is going to focus on the freight transport. So we are sharing the findings mainly on this area. And so first of all, what motivated us to do this research? So from the beginning, as the Minister Naughton just mentioned, actually the road freight sector is the biggest contributor to carbon emission. It's not just in Europe, but also around the world. And road haulage sector has long been known as difficult to organize, difficult to modernize, and even now difficult to decarbonize. So transport sector on the whole is already surpassed, overtaken the energy sector, and now becoming the second largest contributor to greenhouse gas emission in Ireland. The first one is agriculture. And as Minister just mentioned, the road freight combined is almost taken a quarter of the whole transport emissions. And especially since the COVID lockdown last year, we have seen great car use drop in our cities for passenger transport. But however, for freight, the latest statistic has to show that there is a dramatic increase in heavy goods vehicle traffic volume coming into Dublin City and also other towns and cities in Ireland, almost 50%. So the emission from the freight transport especially is still projected to keep increasing. Usually it's correlated with economic growth and recovery. So by doing this research, first of all, we try to take an overview of the current policy landscape regarding sustainable policy policy in Ireland. So we have really pleased to find in recent 2 and 3 years, there are a lot of government policies, local authority lead project, and also public consultations has coming up more frequently towards the freight side. And the table on the right here is taken from the Transport Department Sustainable Mobility Policy Review in 2019, which is largely inspired our study. So this table has summarized the existing and potential carbon measures for the transport sector, for passenger transport and freight transport respectively. Sorry, I just interrupt a bit. Are you seeing the full screen or my notes as well?
We're seeing your notes as well, Sabrina, so we're just seeing
okay.
two screens, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I try to sharing the full screen. Sorry, a bit. Probably just a bit technical.
Yeah, perfect, yeah.
Yeah. This is still the. Okay, no, it's perfect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. So using this, all the policy measures has been categorized using this avoid, shift, and improve framework. Okay, the next one. And so by doing this research, after overview of the current policy landscape, we're starting to go into the literature to identify the international best practice in policy measures to decarbonize freight transport. And a list of 38 sustainable transport measures has been identified. And we are using this freight vision as our main reference here. This is an EU project back in 10 years ago, dedicated focus on sustainable freight transport measures. However, in this publication, some of the measures could be a little bit outdated and also could be already implemented in Europe. So that's why we are taking another really good reference here. It's the Transport Climate Action Directory published by the ITF last year. And they have proposed a list of measures for both passenger and freight transport. And they have some evidence-based case study as well. So by identify those international best practice, and then we are going to, what we have done is to assess these measures. Are they feasible to be adopted in the Irish context? And if yes, what are their potential impact? So by doing this, we are carried out a 2-round Delphi questionnaire to do this. And we have, luckily, we have 21 experts from the government, academia, and the transport industry in Ireland to participate in our research. And so I will briefly just present you the data analysis, and I will come to the summary. So by analyze all these measures, long list of measures, what we have done is analyze from 2 dimensions. So the first one, we rank all these potential measures by their potential impact to if adopted in Ireland. So in this chart, we have a list all the measures that rated to have a positive impact. And the next one is we want to make the full use of the data. So we separate the data from public stakeholders, which are the government and the academia. And then we also analyze the stakeholders result from the industry side in private sector. And see here, the consensus level is very interesting. Here, the longer the bars here, it means the opinions are more diverged among the stakeholder groups towards those measures. For example, you probably notice hydrogen infrastructure is got quite diverged opinions among the stakeholder groups. So after the analysis, and this table has shown the main takeaway of our research. So again, using this ASI framework, we map our identified positive impact measures into this our current measures in Ireland. And however, there is a note that the ASI framework obviously is the international best practice using to categorize the hierarchy of the measures. However, it is not widely used in freight transport. And however, to our best knowledge, Professor Alan McKinnon, the leading scholar in this area, he has adopted this ASI framework and developed into a 5-stage model for decarbonization roadmap, which is adopted by ALICE, the European Logistic Alliance. So we have redefined and clarified the ASI here a bit. So it should be not avoid car use completely, but avoid the demand from the upstream supply chain, but also avoid the traffic. And shift is similar, it's shifting to lower carbon intensity mode to more environmental mode. Improve here got 2 meanings. It's improve the vehicle loading efficiency and also improving the energy efficiency. So potentially our potential measures with a strong positive is only 3 here. So I will highlight more on these 3 measures. So first of all, it's a rail freight. Actually, to our surprising, this rail freight has been rated as the most positive, strong impact. However, paradoxically, rail freight in Ireland actually in recent years has dropped to one of the lowest level among other EU states. It's still debatable in Irish context because a lot of factors such as the infrastructure investment, the freight quantity, the density, and also the distance traveled especially still need to be considered. And there is a recent report saying that 300 kilometers is still the threshold for make the move to the intermodal transport. It's commercially viable. Otherwise, using road freight, road haulage is still cheaper and also quicker. So the second one is cargo bikes. Cargo bikes, actually, we already have seen in our Dublin city center by Antos or also by UPS. They are using cargo bikes. Those are tricycles and also e-cargo bikes as well. But again, cargo bikes is a brilliant measures. However, a proper bikeway network design and also the infrastructure for charging still needed in the urban area, especially. Otherwise, it might jeopardize the road safety for pedestrians and also cyclists. And the last one is a transport consolidation and a cooperation. This is a more general measures on the higher level. It's a more collaboration among all the stakeholders along the supply chain to facilitate better efficient collaboration. So to conclude our findings, there are a lot of insight and comments from the expert that we want to highlight here. So the first one is that the road haulage industry, we still need more policy support and the initiative compared to other EU countries. And just as the minister mentioned before, the alternative fuels and also clean vehicle technologies, we have seen really brilliant progress has been made in the industry these years. However, the technology itself, it still need to be mature in order to be offered at a commercially viable price for all the operators. And the last one is we want to highlight, in order to manage the positive behavioral change and organizational change, we still need to adopt more soft policy measures to our general public to promote the sustainability education and to all the stakeholders along the supply chain. And in hindsight, our research is still got some limitations and more questions has generated during the research process. So we want to keep going, keep conducting our research and trying to answer this question as well. And we can maybe discuss more later on in our Q&A session. So last, as Eoin just mentioned, we have ongoing research. And after researching the current policies in Ireland from the policy-making side, and the current study, actually, we want to go into the industry, looking from an industry perspective to see our road haulage and also road passenger operators, carriers, logistics service providers, what are their perceptions on these decarbonization measures and what are their concerns, awareness. So it would be great if we can get more people involved to do our survey and get more insight into in this study. Okay, thank you. That's my part.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. And you have the QR code there, don't you, on the previous slide if people wanted to take the survey. So if they wanted to take a picture of that to respond to this gap analysis, kind of looking at policy, looking at practice, and looking, is there a gap in between it and how to maybe address those particular gaps. And just to remind people, if you have any questions, you know, please post them in the chat. We've quite a few people on board, so it might be difficult for people to unmute and ask questions. So if you want to post your questions in the chat, and we'll come to those towards the end. Okay, thanks, Sabrina. So next, Tom. Yes, so Tom Ferris, consultant economist, he's going to talk to us about transport centre stage. Tom has done a lot with CILT over the years. He's been involved for many different aspects in many different areas. So Tom is looking at transport has always been extremely important for Ireland. Trading is a small open island economy. But obviously the climate change and Brexit come centre stage. So Tom, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Eoin, and good morning, everybody. I'm very pleased to address this webinar. To start, I would like to pay tribute to the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport for the excellent work it's doing in promoting professionalism and enhancing standards in the transport sector. Today's webinar is a good example of that work. The Policy Committee under your chairmanship, Eoin, has produced this timely research report on the challenges and opportunities that climate change poses for transport. One sentence captures that for me from your report, saying, quote, Ireland will need policies and measures that are radical, innovative and forward-looking to reduce carbon emissions from the transport sector, unquote. I've taken this theme of transport centre stage by dint of the number of recent developments and changes that are affecting transport. Transport has always been at the centre, but I would submit it's even more central now, and that there are more challenges, there are opportunities, but there are also the threat of unexpected consequences. So planning is the name of the game. So under my theme, I'm going to just talk under 4 headings, and they are taking up the point about sustainable freight transport, then moving into the new national investment framework for transport, then looking at the revised national development plan, and then finishing off achieving wider communications, because that's very important. So let me start with sustainable freight transport. Are we on the road to sustainable freight transport? I'd say we are, but I'd say there's a long way to go. And the CILT report recognises this and the fact that there are huge challenges ahead. But there are supports out there for the transport sector. Let me just mention two. First of all, there's the Logistics and Supply Chain Skills Group, of which CILT is a member. This group is supporting the promotion of careers, skills developments, and sustainable employment. The group published its annual report just last month, and in it says, quote, "The perception of the sector's diverse roles, entry routes, and development opportunities, its ability to attract and retain talent, and hence its ability to service the demand for skills over the coming years." So that they see as their mission. And then just over a week ago, Climate Ready, I'll say it again, Climate Ready, a 5-year national climate initiative was launched under the wing of SkillNet Ireland. The initiative is designed to equip businesses with the skills they need to respond to climate change. On the occasion of the launch of the initiative, Minister Simon Harris said, and I quote, "Irish businesses have seen significant upheaval over the past year. COVID-19 for businesses too, and it's essential we help businesses prepare for this radical change." Indeed, just yesterday, the Irish Times, page 19, if you still have it, has a very relevant article on Climate Ready initiative under the title "New Skills for the Green Economy." So there are my two examples on the skills side. But of course, on improving skills is one side. There's also how can you improve the actual performance of the industry. You can do it through, I just mentioned two things, vehicle design, but also the provision of more efficient fuels. The Minister's already announced last month, and she referred to this morning, a new grant scheme to promote the decarbonisation of the heavy duty sector and to assist road transport companies to transition from fossil fuels. It has a very unwieldy title of Alternatively Fueled Heavy Duty Vehicle Purchase Grants Scheme. But of course, if people qualify for the grants, they won't be too fussed about the title. The Minister also has a number of other policy initiatives in the climate change area that are currently underway, and I won't dwell on those. In fact, I won't touch on them. We'll take them as read, and we know this has been recorded so people can play it back later. So we'll move on to my second heading, the National Investment Framework for Transport. And this, at the end of March, the Department of Transport launched a public consultation on this new draft National Investment Framework. So what is it? It's a strategic framework for prioritizing future investment in the land transport network. And to assist in this consultation process, a dozen background papers have been published. They're up on the web. They cover topics such as, obviously, climate change, technology, inter-urban connectivity, and the maintenance of investment projects. The draft sends a strong signal, as I see it, that the era of mega road projects is over. Specifically, it states that, quote, "Government is committed to radically reducing Ireland's greenhouse gas emissions over the next decade. This framework prioritizes investment in decarbonisation and the most environmentally sustainable transport modes," unquote. It goes on further to talk about investment and says, quote, "It will include major public transport schemes in our cities, improved access to sustainability mobility in our towns and rural areas, and major investment in cycling and walking throughout the country," unquote. And it's quite clear from this draft framework that the ranking has changed. The ranking now is taking maintenance of existing infrastructure at a higher level than improving existing assets and constructing new infrastructure projects. So here we are. We have the consultation process underway. Stakeholders, interested parties, and the general public can make their views known. And the process goes on until the 28th of May. So you do have sufficient time to make your views known, and you can influence the policy. I move to my third heading, and that is the National Development Plan. We have one already, but it is going to be updated. And it is interesting It was on Easter Sunday that the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform decided it was a good time to outline what might be in the draft National Development Plan. It's stated in particular, it will be reassessing the transport investment plans, it will be updating the project costs, and it will also be addressing the policy priorities in the current programme for government, obviously tackling post-Brexit developments and reacting to the ongoing impacts of COVID-19. And yes, it did have a consultative process, which has been completed now. In fact, there were nearly 600 submissions received. Yes, I did include a submission, so I can put my hand up here. But interesting in the documents, departments were also asked to make their views known. In particular, they were asked to analyse whether their investment priorities are aligned with Ireland's climate and environmental objectives. In the case of the Department of Transport, it acknowledged the scale of the challenges ahead. And specifically, it stated, and I quote, "Commitments will require intensification of action, introduction of new measures, and likely demand constraint." I find this particularly interesting, the last few words, likely demand constraint. So you can think about that. The department also went on to highlight the promotion of active travel, walking and cycling, and it promised in the future to promote, quote, "well-developed walking and cycling networks, enabling active travel as the mode of choice for localized travel and supporting the sustainable development of local communities." This focus on active travel will, in my view, deflect emphasis away from the development of big road projects. Last May, CILT published an article I wrote on this, which had the title of, wait for it, "Greening of Ireland's Transport Investment Projects." And yes, you can see it on the web. The focus on large-scale road developments, in my view, will decrease even further with new investment in rail. In this regard, the Minister for Transport, Eoin Ryan, and the Minister for Infrastructure in Northern Ireland, Joanne Mellon, announced just last week, the launch of an all-Ireland strategic rail review. This review will consider how the rail network on the island of Ireland can improve sustainable connectivity between the major cities, enhance regional accessibility, and support balanced regional development. In addition, the review will consider the feasibility of higher speeds on the rail network and whether there's a potential to increase the use of the network for freight. And Sabrina did mention this particular point. So I'm on to my last and fourth part, wider communications. I like the point that was made in the CILT report when it said, quote, "It is through dissemination of this study that we hope to raise the awareness and readiness towards the low carbon transition." I fully agree with that statement. And there's more that can be done. It struck me that the CILT should be able to play a bigger role in the work of the International Transport Forum. It's doing very interesting work under an initiative called the Transport Climate Action Directory. This directory is part of the Decarbonisation Transport Initiative, and that's a partnership of over 70 governments, organisations, institutions, foundations and companies. And what it is, it's an online database of CO2 reduction measures, and it contains more than 60 different mitigation measures, along with the evidence base needed to assess their effectiveness. Clearly, the CILT Policy Committee has scope to share with and to benefit from the work of the International Transport Forum. Let me finish with three very brief points. First, I would encourage the CILT policy to continue with its good work, which it has illustrated it in this particular report today. Secondly, I would like to thank Sabrina and Zhang for her Trojan work right through this project. And lastly, I will be writing up my presentation and submitting it to Linkline. And for that reason, you may be interested in 9 or 10 online references that I will have there that will give, no pun intended, the link to my paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for that roundup and that insightfulness there and some of the key points that you've pulled out for people. And if I'll just remind people, if you have some questions, please put them in the chat box, and we'll get to them in due course towards the end of the presentations. So we're going to move on now to something slightly different from a more practitioner perspective, I suppose. We got John Pakenham, co-founder and director at VisionGreen, going to speak to us on the topic of VisionGreen's journey on biomethane, fleet and sustainability reporting, how sustainability reporting and customer impact data can support a transition to a triple bottom line approach to sustainability. So I'm very much looking forward to this one. John, thanks very much for coming along today. If you want to share your slides, please, and we'll delighted to listen to your presentation.
Thanks, Eoin. Thanks, folks. Give me a second now. How are we looking? Can we see anything?
Yeah, we can see your slides.
Very good. I suppose we were waiting on that to pop up. Yeah, listen, appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys this morning. Privileged. Actually, I was just saying to the folks when we were prepping that I actually started my further education journey with CILT in the mid-noughties, doing the diploma in supply chain management with Pat Mullen. So I'm very, as I say, I'm very privileged to speak to you guys this morning and be involved in this webinar. So, without further ado, I suppose to start off, as Minister Naughton said, and subsequent speakers. So this is a quote from Elon Musk. So if you don't have sustainable energy, you have unsustainable energy, and essentially the sector we're speaking of here and researching into the freight sector is very dependent on diesel, fossil fuels. So therefore it's unsustainable. So whatever your thoughts on Mr. Musk are, I think he's quite on the money there. In terms of VisionGreen, very briefly, I'm going to just talk about who we are and what we're about. So Ronan Murphy, my business partner, and myself started VisionGreen in late 2018. Ronan and myself started working together about just over 20 years ago now in Tesco. We both worked in various different roles across that business in logistics, supply chain, retail management, and change projects. But we both young families always shared a passion for delivering projects that had, I suppose, purposeful change associated with them. So we decided to take the plunge and try and apply our skills and learnings through VisionGreen, which, as I say, was founded in late 2018. So at VisionGreen, we provide innovative solutions that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, reduce waste, but support long-term corporate and social responsibility goals. So that's how we try and work with our partners and customers. How we do that, obviously with our background and experience, we work with some of our clients around implementing, I suppose, sustainable supply chain and efficiency projects, which, a lot of time efficiency goes hand in hand with sustainability, despite maybe some of the perceptions that, green will cost more. So that's one area we work in. We're also very excited about, we're as the techies tell me, we're in the beta stage of developing our sustainability reporting platform. We're very excited about this. We feel transparent, credible sustainability reporting is key to moving forward in this space, and we want to be able to work and support our partners and businesses to do that as simply as possible. So yeah, we're very excited about that. We hope to launch it late this year. We're in test mode at the minute with a couple of clients around particular sections of it, and we've partnered with the Global Reporting Initiative in terms of the standards that those guys have coined to underpin our reporting platform. The third area is and it kind of ties into supply chain. In terms of value chain, we've been lucky enough to be involved in a couple of really nice circular economy projects in terms of packaging waste, and then last year we were involved in the recovery and regeneration of food waste from all the Tesco stores in Ireland, where previously this commodity was being processed outside of the Republic, but we were able to facilitate that food waste being recovered in an anaerobic digestion plant in Kildare, where the food waste was turned into green renewable gas and was able to go back and heat some of Tesco stores. So a real circular solution, and nice one to be involved in, and also I suppose really first time showed us the power of and the impact of biogas and biomethane. And then the fourth element, which I'm going to obviously spend a bit more time talking about, is about just over a year ago now today, we launched VisionGreen Logistics, which essentially is a transport business with a purpose to reduce carbon emissions, and we do that through the use of gas-powered trucks, which are we've a small but growing fleet, which are fueled by both compressed natural gas and biomethane. So yeah, that's been a fantastic experience, and I'm going to talk to you a bit about I suppose how we became so clear that was I suppose a pivot we needed to take, and actually a pivot that would be beneficial to actually this whole subject we're talking about today. So I don't probably need to go into all this because it's been discussed by both the minister and Sabrina, but essentially we're in a climate emergency. Transport pretty much is either first or second in terms of emissions in most developed countries. So there's and obviously within that, as I think both the minister and Sabrina said, freight and goods movement is generally about 25% of those emissions. So, and then to delve a little bit deeper, diesel in Ireland is related to 62% of our energy related emissions. So, transport's an opportunity, and within that, alternative fuels is an opportunity, and then I suppose there's national and European policies that will support the kind of direction of travel with this over the next number of years. So that started to, I suppose, focus our minds around the alternative fuel piece. When we looked at what was happening in terms of what was, I suppose, not just theoretically possible, but what was reasonably practical. We've looked at, we started off looking at kind of academic research. We're tied in with TU, with Sabrina and some of the guys in TU Dublin. We're also do some engagement with DCU, and we've done our own research in this space. And I suppose there is obviously a big drive towards electrification, and potentially hydrogen is very exciting in the future if we can produce enough renewable energy, which hopefully when we have lots of offshore wind farms we can. But certainly what the academics and then a European report published last year was that, right now and really from 2025 onwards, CNG is a really good alternative fuel to diesel with 15% lower emissions, and biomethane has the potential to be carbon positive if within that process the carbon is captured, which it obviously can be, and then even with the movement to electric, which will happen certainly for private cars and lower smaller size goods vehicles. We've got a challenge to decarbonize our energy grid. We're 65% thereabouts dependent on gas for electricity at the minute. So there's a long road ahead, as Tom said, in terms of decarbonizing transport and the freight sector. But certainly the insight we had there was that CNG is a good option for now and is a pathway for biomethane. We looked at who was best in Europe, and everyone always talks about Scandinavia. So won't spend too long on this, but Sweden are the lowest transport emitters per capita in Europe, and actually when you look at what Sweden have done, and they've done a number of things, but in particular, if you look at their use of gas over the last kind of 20 years, you can really see there that the development of biogas has been pivotal to fulfilling their gas needs. And actually they've set a target by 2030 to fulfill all their gas needs with biomethane. So real leadership and strategy around biogas production. Similarly, Denmark, similar size and population and agriculture landscape as Ireland, you know, they too have put big emphasis and focus on biogas production, and you know, are one of the biggest per capita biogas producers probably in the world actually. But you know what is driven and renowned for the renewable energy development, and you know, it's been again a holistic I suppose suite of areas that have delivered that in terms of energy efficiency, electrification, green transport, and a shift to biogas. So you know, those informed us, and then finally, very quickly, you know, what was happening in the business sector. So you know, you'd got companies like Amazon, you know, who are building, well, their owner anyways is building rockets and stuff like that. Are, you know, have purchased just this year 700 compressed gas trucks as part of the long-term strategy to decarbonise their fleet. And similarly, John Lewis in the UK have set a target of being carbon neutral by 2028, by ensuring all their trucks are converted to gas and fueled with biomethane. So I've kind of really flown through that, but that really informed our position around, you know, CNG to biogas. You know, that's an alternative that's theoretically and practically possible right now. So what is biogas? Apologies for anyone that is familiar with this, but just very, very briefly, biogas is, I suppose, it's generated from a process called anaerobic digestion. These anaerobic digestion plants typically develop in and around agriculture and farms, and it's a fantastic way of, I suppose, dealing with farm waste and livestock waste and food production waste, but also can be you know, used to treat water waste, and in some countries obviously fuel crops have been developed to feed anaerobic digestion too. So essentially works through a digestion process just like your stomach, where gas is produced. So it's biogas, which can be used to create heat and electricity, and also there's a digestate, which works again similarly to your stomach, which can be used as an eco-fertilizer on farmland, which obviously supports reduction in chemical fertilizer and stuff like that. And then finally, and the important bit in terms of the use for transport, the biogas can be upgraded. So biogas is about 60% methane, 40% carbon, give or take, and the carbon can be extracted from that process and upgraded to methane, which then can be used in the gas grid or to heat, to power transport. So that's what biogas is, and Ireland is really ripe, from all the literature and all the research we've done. Ireland's really ripe for biomethane production. So you know, we're a huge food production country, huge influence in agriculture. You know, there's over 35 million tons of slurries that are untreated, that are kind of spread on land each year. We've grown amounts of food waste, unfortunately, and obviously with huge plans to grow food production, there's the risk that will continue. And food waste is a consequence of the food production system, albeit, you know, lots of focus is on reducing it. And you've animal slaughter waste, and then obviously there's an opportunity to diversify grass and tillage field. Obviously, huge emphasis on the agriculture sector and emissions. You know, there's an opportunity there for farmers to diversify. But essentially, when you combine all those things, we have a lot of good things going for us from a biogas possibility point of view. And you know, the development of an indigenous biogas or biomethane sector in Ireland could support Ireland become more fuel secure around and achieve our 2030 Res T targets, and kind of dissolve the reliance on importing liquid transport fuel and biofuel. So huge opportunity. You don't have to just believe me. You know, EU report last year highlighted Ireland as the country with the biggest potential for renewable gas production in Europe. So I suppose all that kind of research and learning, we put our action to the and tried to bring it to life last year, thankfully with the support of our partners with BWG Foods, where we've put the first two biomethane fueled HGVs on the road. So March 2020, right as lockdown was starting, which was an experience in itself, we launched the first two 30-foot rigids refrigerated trucks with our partners BWG. They're servicing BWG stores all around the country. And yeah, we're very, very proud, along with our partners at BWG, to have the most environmentally friendly HGVs on the island. So that's been a great experience. Hasn't, you know, it was all, you know, it hasn't all been easy, but it was about trying to demonstrate that this was very, very achievable. And I suppose bringing it back to the reporting piece and I suppose how we try and I suppose win hearts and minds on this journey in terms of the actions we take and the kind of, as I said at the outset, we're a business that is purpose driven. You know, we've put a huge emphasis on sustainability reporting. So when we talk to our clients and our customers, you know, we you know, yes, of course, costs are important and we're not naive to that. But, you know, I think, you know, as mentioned at the outset, you know, people are becoming more aware and conscious of the triple bottom line. So we talk about other elements like the social and environmental impact. And in the first 12 months with the logistics business, we've as I said, a small but growing fleet of 4 vehicles, fueled with both CNG and biomethane. You know, there's some really good insights we have in that, but, you know, both in terms of fuel efficiency and albeit the trucks are a bit more expensive, there is savings versus diesel when managed correctly. But most importantly to us, we're having a positive impact on the environment. So, you know, the reduction in CO2 to date on our fleet has reduced CO2 by 51 tons, which, you know, is the equivalent of 5,100 mature trees, what they could sequester in a year. And again, there's some creative accounting out there around, you know, tree carbon offsetting through tree planting, but, you know, it would, as I say, 5,100 mature trees would be required to sequester that amount of carbon. So, and just one final point we've looked at in terms of the impact biomethane could have on the freight and also the transport sector in Ireland. You know, a relatively medium-sized AD plant could produce enough biogas to fuel 100 biomethane trucks, which would be the equivalent of taking over 3,000 cars off the road. So that's the type of impact that, you know, biogas could have in this discussion and sector. It hasn't all been plain sailing. You know, we are a small business. We have had great support from our partners, but there are some challenges, you know, and what we've done with the 2 vehicles that are fueled with biomethane isn't really scalable as we fill them at the AD plant. So that's cumbersome and can drive up costs, but as I said, we've got good partners that believe in this project. There's limited production of biomethane in the south of Ireland, and currently the market conditions are more favourable to generate electricity with that biogas. Gas trucks is in its infancy in Ireland, and the infrastructure is in its infancy. So, you know, costs are higher than diesel, but obviously, as the minister announced, the grants will go some way to mitigating some of that cost. The refueling infrastructure is a challenge, and there's only 2 publicly available refueling stations in the country. There are some private fueling stations, but, you know, I do know Gas Networks Ireland have great plans to bring on, you know, a dozen fueling stations over the next couple of years. So there are challenges for sure, but there are also green shoots. So Gas Networks Ireland is supporting initiatives like Project Clover, which is essentially the dairy sector coming together, working collaboratively to generate the market conditions to develop biogas in that sector with their waste and generate biomethane for their value chain to decarbonize their supply chain. So that's really positive. It demonstrates that, you know, there's a demand there from a sector, and I think that does, for me anyways, it does kind of set a bit of a blueprint possibly for the transport sector. The government grants we spoke about, and then carbon tax. And I did note, you know, and I did make note a couple of times that in the research policy document, you know, it's carbon tax isn't viewed too, how do I say this, positively in terms of the potential outcome. And albeit punitive, certainly we believe that, you know, can only be a positive in terms of addressing the kind of the making biomethane and CNG and alternative fuels more competitive. It does have to be done sensibly, but I think the government have got it right up to now. And I suppose the analogy I view, which may not be a great analogy, is that, you know, you know, cigarette smokers over the last 20 years, I'm sure none of them would have been advocating for taxation on cigarettes, you know, but there can be no debate at this stage that it's influenced good behaviours and saved lives and I suppose being an all-round good thing. So I think we'll look back in years to come and say the same about carbon tax. And then obviously the Climate Action Bill, which is, you know, has put a real good target now on 50% reduction on GHG emissions by 2030. So I'm conscious I'm slightly over time here, but so finally, you know what, I suppose what would I be asking of CILT or you know, what are the kind of things to maybe take away? Well, we need greater saturation of gas vehicles. So if and I do think there's going to need to be a plethora of alternative options to diesel, but you know, if we want, you know, to move forward gas, and then because we see gas as a vehicle to get into biomethane, you know, we need greater saturation. So the grants for sure will help on that, but I think more research, because it is a little bit limited in the report. I did note that in terms of CNG and biomethane. I think a bit more research, and I welcome what the Minister spoke about earlier in terms of that research. You know, I don't know if the Minister's still on, but lobbying for biogas production, again, don't need to go into too much detail here, because the Minister mentioned that this will be included in the research plan for this year. And then finally, you know, we need to start talking in two currencies. So, you know, transport sector is a competitive market. We've seen that as much as we report driven business, it does a lot of time come down to cost. But the direction of travel is green, you know, and I think the freight sector needs to diversify its proposition to its customers, you know, in terms of CNG, bio, electric, where it's feasible. And the other bit I think the freight sector needs to do is get, you know, really good at measuring carbon footprint and being able to articulate that and to be able to, I suppose, mitigate against that. And we'd be more than happy, because we've obviously done it ourselves and we're working with some of our clients on this. We'd be more than happy to talk to anybody about that, because I suppose to finish, you know, you can't improve what you don't measure. So listen, thanks very much everybody for listening. A little bit over time, but that's our journey at VisionGreen, and squeeze a lot in there, but thanks very much.
Thanks, John. That was really informative and very interesting in terms of what you guys are doing. And it really seems like a win-win situation. So it'd be interesting to kind of maybe go back later on, go through your slides in a bit more depth and explore it. And I'm sure we'll get some interesting questions in relation to that in a couple of moments' time. So our next speaker, I'm delighted also to welcome Joanne Mellon, Logistics Director at BWG Foods. And Joanne is going to talk to us in relation to technology-enabled carbon saving in BWG's fleet operations. And again, how BWG achieved carbon savings through the use of technology in fleet operations. So looking forward to this one as well, Joanne. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, John. Yeah, you are on mute, and you can now share your screen. Yeah, perfect. We can see it. Yeah, Joanne, you are on mute. The microphone. Maybe. Yeah, perfect.
Good morning, everyone. I was delighted to be invited by the Chartered Institute to present to you this morning. I'd like to give you a brief overview of the alternative fuel truck technologies that we are currently using in BWG Foods and those we are investigating for future use. But first, let me tell you a little bit about BWG, just to give you a view of our size and scale and the work that we're doing. So BWG is very much recognised as a leading retail and wholesale business and accounts for about 12% of the overall food market in Ireland. The company owns and operates the Spar, Eurospar, Mace, Londis and Excel brands in the Republic of Ireland. And we work in partnership with independent retailers with more than 1,000 stores across local communities across the country. We also operate a very strong wholesale division with a network of 22 cash and carry branches across Value Centre, Four Aces and Betterdale Navan. And we also have a very strong food service division, and we recently acquired both Carb Foods and Heaney Meats. Building strong relationships is very much one of the values of BWG Foods, and we partner with more than 650 suppliers, dealing directly with approximately 14,000 customers in the retail, food service and licensed sectors. We employ 1,641 members of our team directly, with a further 23,000 people employed in local communities through BWG's networks of stores. and our stores serve in excess of 1 million customers every day. We also have a subsidiary in the UK, Appleby Westward, and we operate the Spar franchise in the southwest of England and directly employ more than 1,400 people. So we began investigating.
Joanne, sorry, just to interrupt. On your display of the slides, could you display setting set to bigger screen? So now we are seeing on the top here, display settings. Yeah,
display settings. Yeah.
Yeah, and you click that, and we got a swap presenter. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, now we see the bigger screen. Yeah.
So we began investigating alternative fuels some years ago. Just to give you an idea of our composition of our fleet and our national distribution centre at the moment, we have 75 Euro 6 diesel units, 25 CNG and biogas units. We've ordered 10 more CNG units, and they replace 10 of the Euro 6. We have 30 standard fridge trailer units, 8 double-deck ambient units, and 2 fridge double-deck units. Our strategy is to have 50% of our fleet on CNG or biogas by 2024. So we service over 1,000 stores across 84,000 square kilometres, and our vehicles cover an average 350 kilometres a day with 60% double utilisation. So we at BWG Foods believe the popular view that there is no silver bullet, that a holistic suite of technologies will be required to progress carbon reduction in transport, such as biogas fuels, electric and green hydrogen, with diesel and natural gas playing a major part in the transition. In 2015, we replaced all our HGVs with Euro 6 diesel vehicles. But we also knew that the best strategy for decarbonisation was to reduce kilometres travelled and vehicles used. So our consolidation project yielded a reduction of 2.3 million kilometres annually and coincided with the insourcing of our chill and fruit and veg operation from the 3PL model. In 2018, we removed a further 1.5 million kilometres with our rerouting project, and we used simulated and dynamic routing scenarios in order to achieve that. In 2018, we began exploring alternative fuels, and we partnered with Scania Ireland and Gas Networks Ireland. We were the first FMCG in Ireland to launch a fleet of CNG vehicles in 2018, yielding savings of up to 20% in CO2 and 90% NOx emissions. We then introduced biogas blend under the CNG certification system. And in 2020, we expanded our fleet with 7 26-ton rigid vehicles with carrier electric fridges and energy-saving air curtain technology. Also in 2020, we partnered with VisionGreen, launching 2 solely biogas fuel vehicles, and each of these vehicles, completing 140,000 kilometres per annum, can save 90 tonnes of CO2 emissions per annum. And we were the first and only FMCG in the country to use this technology. Under the agreement with VisionGreen, we supply waste food from our national distribution centre, which is used in the anaerobic digestion process to produce biomethane, promoting the circular economy. In 2020, we secured Ireland's first all-electric Vito van, which was followed by Ireland's first Mercedes Sprinter van in January 2021. And these zero-emission vehicles carry small JIT deliveries around Dublin city centre, which is actually quite close to our national distribution centre. It is a positive step, but these vehicles are limited due to range and charging time. In 2021, we introduced 2 new double-deck fridge trailers to our fleet, reducing trunking to our regional cross-docks by a further 260,000 kilometres per annum and 170 tonnes of CO2 per annum. Electric HGVs are due to reach the Irish market by 2022, and we will try them when they arrive. All our efforts to date have yielded savings of 45,000 tonnes of CO2 emissions. And currently we operate the cleanest HGV fleet in Ireland. So these are the alternative fuel options that we have investigated and show comparatives as we've seen them And the average costs are based on 120,000 kilometres travelled per year on gas vehicles. Again, electric vehicles, when they arrive, will have significant charging times and will be limited by range, as I just said earlier. So there's some of the experiences that we have seen on our journey, but I would like to call out the excellent work done by our colleagues in Spa, Switzerland, and show the summary of their experiences. So only this week, they actually launched their first hydrogen-powered truck, which is fueled by their own hydrogen fueling solution. And we look forward to collaborating them going forward on the new technologies that are becoming available. So thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thanks, Joanne. That was also very informative and interesting to see your journey that you're going on in relation to BWG there. So thank you very much for that. Sabrina, do we want to go to some questions? Maybe do you want to go to the chat and see if there's some questions? I know I have some as well that maybe we can look to explore, but have we got some in the chat?
Yeah, maybe we can, all the panelists can answer Chris' question actually. It's in the Q&A. Chris asking, would it be benefit if a practical menu could be produced for the companies describing those 60 mitigation measures that by the ITF, both small and large, and could be implemented in stages in any operation? Yes, I would say that's what we are working on it, because we want to develop some more toolkits or menus for our industry companies, especially for the SMEs, how to implement, how to adopt all these measures. Yeah. Owen,
could I add something to that?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just to make the point, one of my references in my paper that I'm going to submit to the Institute of Transport is the link to the International Transport Forum, and one of the papers on that website. And the breadcrumb trail is quite good in terms of finding the directory and finding those measures. The one thing that strikes me is that not all of the measures will be opposite in an Irish context, but a goodly number of them will be.
Thanks, Tom. Well, I also think, you know, it's a new adventure for so many organisations, and thinking about how, what are the milestones, what are the steps in terms of the process, in terms of guidance, and I think that's something we've been talking quite a bit about at CILT in terms of what support potentially should we develop maybe as a CILT as well to help the industry and help the sector too. Obviously, there's quite a lot of measures and quite a lot of things you could potentially be doing, so we won't necessarily be doing it all, but maybe we'll focus on some of the key aspects in terms of trying to give advice. And I know there's other aspects like the Smart Freight Centre, for example, and other areas out there that are also working on this particular aspects there. Okay, thank you.
Just one other very quick comment, and it is that Ireland has just come out of the chair of the International Transport Forum, so there's somebody on a desk in the department. Now, they may be isolated somewhere around the country, but who would have a link in, there's that word again, to the International Transport Forum, because Ireland is a leading member of that organisation.
Yes. And we have another question, maybe for John. This is from Conor Malloy. They're saying, congratulations on the VisionGreen. And is VisionGreen are using the GLEC framework or ISO standard, or I know you are currently have the GRI initiative as a member of the company.
Yeah, GRI, the Global Report Initiative, is the I suppose the standards, or the set of standards that we've aligned ourselves with, and I won't lie, like, it's complex, like, you know, especially for a small business like ours with, you know, growing but small team still. So we're definitely on a journey with that. But yeah, the Global Report Initiative, when we done our research and kind of looked into it, that was the one we I suppose felt was the one that was most broadly accepted as being good. And I suppose I kind of links into that too. But also, you know, within the Global Report Initiative, there's obviously, I don't think there is one absolute. That's the thing we've learned with sustainability standards. So obviously within the Global Report Initiative, there's reference to the greenhouse gas protocol and stuff like that too. So, you know, there's kind of, you know, essentially it's a standard set of standards, it's a framework that kind of points you in the right direction. There is a lot of interpretation that goes with this, you know, probably more so than what we're used to with other standards. Yeah, the Global Reporting Initiative, Sabrina, is what we've kind of built a lot of our approach to date on.
Yeah, thank you, Zhang. And yeah, there is quite a tough question from Professor Sweeney in the UK now. And he is actually a participant in our study and also before the study by the TII. So he is asking, why do you think public policy making in Ireland and elsewhere has been so afraid blind for so long? Maybe we can, maybe Joanne, from the industry perspective.
I'd like to enter the fray on this one. Ed, how are things in Birmingham? I hope you're well. I would say, first of all, isn't this a wonderful initiative of the Chartered Institute of Transport and Logistics in Ireland, what's happening on this webinar? I know that's today, but there is a lot of work that's going on. I think it isn't taken at a high profile level, but anybody who's looking at LinkedIn, and that includes you, will have seen, particularly in the last 6 months, the number of pieces of research, analysis that are going on, particularly in a Brexit context. I mean, I just refer to my own letter to the Financial Times there recently, picking up on an error a journalist had in relation to the land bridge. Now, you might say, and it's a pity the minister has gone, that there's not enough publicity, communications on this theme, and it was for that reason that I included as my final topic, wider communications. So let's hear more about it. Let's share our views. Good luck, Ed.
I completely agree with you, Tom, in terms of, I suppose, the visibility of logistics, and maybe the general public just assume the goods turn up, and it's only when it doesn't turn up that it starts to raise the question. And maybe Brexit, COVID, they've all highlighted the importance of logistics and supply chains. So maybe hopefully going forward, I think we can see a lot more momentum around freight transport policy, and hopefully we'll help in terms of increasing that profile and pushing for more developments in that particular area. So yeah, I think it's a really important point that in the past maybe it hasn't been the key focus. It's been public transport and infrastructure has been some of the key focus.
Yeah, and here is a question for Joanna. Great work in your adoption of alternative fuels. You mentioned that your biomethane is certified. The biofuel obligation scheme last report shows no certified biomethane supply. What platform is your biomethane currently certified through? Yeah, from James. Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll call on Ken and Mark, who are on the call as well, who work closely with VisionGreen on this. So Ken or Mark, would you like to respond to that one?
Let's see if we can activate their. Yeah, I activate Mark's microphone. If Mark Crow want to come up to the microphone to speak, we can wait a bit and maybe. Yeah, Mark.
Yes, the VisionGreen relationship is obviously with Generation Green. Sorry, that should have been mentioned earlier. So Generation Green supply the trucks to VisionGreen, and that's how we get the gas there. We've also got certs last year from the UK when we purchased about 5,000 under the certification scheme in the UK, and we got that via gas networks.
Could I come in for a second there too, Sabrina, just to James's question? Actually, he's right. It's actually on my one of my last slides around the need for a certification scheme in Ireland. I do know the Renewable Gas Forum are currently working on that and actually have a blueprint and roadmap to align that with what's happening in Europe. So that might be an avenue that James can look at if he's interested.
Yes. And yeah, we also got a question. I'm not so sure how to answer. It's from Bruno. Does Ireland has the industrial capacity to support daily operation of hybrid diesel converted to burn biofuel plus battery, short sea ships, supply the biofuel for engines and automotive? I'm not.
I'm not sure if I can answer that one in terms of what capacity is. I don't know, John, you mentioned about there was a lot of capacity there in terms of, I suppose, agricultural industry as well, but I don't know if there's any figures to suggest, you mentioned the Irish Times report as well, but I don't know if there's any comprehensive figures to suggest how much it could support all in terms of those different types of transport mode.
I actually did read Bruno's question, and I was trying to unpick it actually. There's a fair bit in it. Like to reference what I was speaking about, there's been academic kind of research into gas and biofuel development in Ireland for over 2 decades now. And in particular the area of interest for us, biogas. It's kind of, it's at an academic level anyways, it's very well documented that Ireland has huge potential. And then, as I said, that European report last year kind of ratified that to a certain extent. But obviously there's a lot of moving parts in that. Agriculture sector by kind of design is quite fragmented, and how do you try and coordinate all that would be one of the barriers to realising that biogas potential. On the other elements in terms of I can't really speak to the other elements. I'm not as well versed, if I'm honest.
Okay, yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for that. Any more questions, Sabrina?
Yeah, there is one question from Connor Cody to us actually, because hydrogen, in our bar chart, we have shown there is quite a great consensus split among public stakeholder and the industry stakeholders. And we have seen actually there's great steering towards the hydrogen industry in recent years in the UK, and also here ESB has recent announcement that they want to develop the hydrogen fuel for heavy haulage. And so actually the hydrogen is really clean energy, but the industry operators and the carriers, they are still saying that, argue that there is no commercial viable options for them, because they are extremely expensive, and also the technology developed at the moment is still not mature enough to keep up with the fueling and also the range of the vehicles. I'm not an expert on the heavy goods vehicle energy engineering side, but there are the arguments coming from these.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Sabrina. From my perspective, and I haven't delved massively into hydrogen, but in terms of the requirements and infrastructure and energy, in terms of the efficiency, I think there are still some questions in relation to that. But as technology develops, efficiency and effectiveness improves usually, so we'll maybe have to wait and see how things progress in relation to that. I know, John, you focus a little bit on that as well in terms of the near future, that the biomethane aspect seems to be more realistic than hydrogen for the moment.
Well, I suppose my research and what VisionGreen, what we've kind of and we've looked into this, like we hope hydrogen becomes more readily available. As I said, there needs to be a number of alternatives. The challenge at the minute is, and I'm not a hydrogen expert, but the production method for hydrogen is very obviously dependent on energy, and that drives up the cost of hydrogen. And the cost of hydrogen is very expensive right now. So, and then the although Joanne mentioned the one of the other jurisdictions in the SPAR group, like there are hydrogen trucks being tested, but obviously the technology in terms of the vehicle isn't as well tested as maybe the CNG. So I suppose to kind of circle back, our view is because CNG, albeit in its infancy here, CNG trucks are widespread around Europe, and as I mentioned earlier, Sweden and some of the other countries around Europe, and also in the States. So CNG is a well-established technology, where hydrogen there's just, I suppose, more unknowns. But at some point in the future, if you believe all the, which we're always the optimist, if you believe all the plans that we have to develop offshore wind, then we're potentially going to have a fair bit of surplus wind energy. And one of the big challenges with wind energy, as I understand, Connor might correct me, because I know Connor's a bit of an expert in this, is being able to store that energy, and hydrogen presents that as hydrogen presents as a battery option for that wind, surplus wind energy. So at some point, conceivably, we will have access to cheaper and renewable hydrogen. But yeah, I correct access. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Thanks. And Sabrina, any other questions there?
Yeah, maybe time-wise, we have answered maybe the final last question around the e-fuels electric vehicles. There are 3 questions from Noel, from Jadminas, and also Muvadia. They are saying, will the electric vehicles becoming the next big things in Ireland, and also such as the project like a Porsche and the Siemens Energy developing in Chile? I would say there are some manufacturers like a Scandinavia and a Renault. They are developing those EV truck, but however, they are only still just a piloting project. For example, in Switzerland, Renault is piloting their big truck, electric vehicle truck, and they are saying one charge actually they can sustain their 1-day range. So they're still piloting. And for EV, in our policy report, actually we want to stress this. We want to direct the EV to more public bus passenger transport, and also we should steering towards this direction, but rather than our private cars, and also the freight truck also need more mature technology to be developed. Yeah.
Thanks, Sabrina. I agree with you there in terms of, I suppose, a lot of the emphasis on electric vehicles has been maybe on the shorter routes and maybe urban aspects, but there's still quite a bit of research going on in terms of the long haul aspects around, I suppose, the charge and battery life associated with that. Are there any more questions? I have one question in mind actually for Joanne, if that's okay. I know we focus a lot in terms of technology aspects, but I know you picked up in relation to your presentation around operational, in terms of consolidation and reduced trucks on roads. And I kind of wondered, it was probably something more close to my background in terms of the balance there, you think, between the importance of, their operational efficiency and utilization levels versus the use of, new technology. And do you think, the technology is going to be the biggest impact, or do you still think there's a lot to be done around operations and efficiency to reduce the number of trucks on the road?
I believe that our operation is so expansive, like most, we're hitting the 26 counties every day. I don't think we'll ever stop looking at operational efficiencies.
Yeah.
It will be something that is always on the radar. And we will use technology where we can, and we would be very open technology, just love anything that will, bring the business forward. But I think operationally, yes, 100%, efficiencies all the way. And that takes working not only within the operation, but we have nearly 1,100 retailers. It's working with them as well. We can't just make changes without dealing with our customers, because whatever we do impacts the guys out in the stores as well. So I think the two have to work very much hand in hand, and we'll never get away from that. And I think that's what makes it interesting.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks. Okay, I think we're coming close to the end of our session here today. I'd like very much to thank everybody for the participations. Thank you for the presenters. It was very informative, and thank you everyone for participating and for your questions as well. So we'll wrap it up, and we will have the recording as well and put the slides onto the website. Again, it will be under the policy committee section of CILT.ie. But yeah, thank you very much. It was a really great session. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
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 Just stop the recording.